Welcome to the ERECA BLS Challenge Basics. My name is Paul Wilson. I'm on the ERECA board. I am the EMS at Large member. I made this presentation along with Erwin Viller, the BLS chair, and we made this just to go over kind of what is this competition about, who is it for, and such. ERECA puts on a number of challenges, and this is the BLS challenge. Throughout this, you'll probably hear me say challenge or competition. I run a number of competitions in my state, and I'm just used to saying competition, so that's going to come out from time to time. But the challenge, competition, whichever, that's what I'm talking about. So first off, why compete? Why participate in a challenge like this? I've had folks come in and say, "Cal, that wasn't like real life at all. Real life is not the same as this challenge." Often it's really experienced EMS providers that didn't do as well as they thought they were going to do once we scored them. Looking at the scores, looking at real life, they are not the same thing. Competition is not the same as real life. I grant you that. But I do think those that prepare for competition, participate in it, and evaluate how they did, they think about their practice, they are going to be better responders because of their participation in a challenge. And I see it all the time. I've got students, I'm involved in EMS education, and I have students that do these challenges, they are so much better. They understand the material deeper. They are able to integrate skills together, and they have better teamwork and such. And that leads me to my last point on here, critical thinking practice. It's really easy for us to set up skill stations and have people practice skill stations and get those down so they're perfect. But we don't have as many opportunities to practice critical thinking, and that's what this type of competition or challenge does. It gives you an opportunity to practice critical thinking, communication, teamwork, and things like that. So I think that is why people should compete. So for our BLS competition, here's just an overview of it, of how it goes. We have teams of three competitors or three responders. Each team will go through 3 scenarios and a written test. We do have some flexibility, and I think in the rules, which we'll cover at another time, talks about only 2 scenarios and a written test, but this is how we've done this over the years, that we've come down to about 3 scenarios and a written test. One of those team members needs to be an EMT. It is an EMT level test, or the test is, and also the competition is kind of based on EMT skills. It takes place in an afternoon or morning. It takes about 3 to 4 hours, and the teams will go through the scenarios and the written test as different stations. They'll go through with a group of other teams. So depending on how many other teams there are, you might have 3 teams or 4 teams traveling together, and they'll all do scenario 1 all at the same time. You'll each have your own work area within that scenario, but we'll have 4 sets or 3 sets, depends on how many teams there are, but you'll have multiple sets going at the same time, running simultaneously. And then you move on to the next scenario, and then maybe the test, and then the last scenario, however you are in that rotation. We've done this at Disaster City at Teeks. We have also done this at the hotel and other venues, so we'll just kind of use the space that we have. Each scenario is broken up is a 20-minute scenario, or around 20 minutes. We have some flexibility there, but this, again, is kind of how we've come down on how we do it. The first 5 minutes is what we call immediate action. We combine all the reading, planning of our actions, securing the scene, taking care of that patient, or doing the primary assessment and finding and treating those life-threatening injuries within the first 5 minutes. Then we move on to the next 13 minutes. That's just continued work time. You can continue to assess, treat, package your patients. But then we give you a 2-minute warning. The last 2 minutes, you can continue working, continue doing assessment and care, but you also give a verbal report, a verbal handoff report, as if ALS has arrived and you can now give a report. What we do in these scenarios is we try to figure out what is the difference between a good team and a great team. And so we found that in that first 5 minutes, a good team may eventually get a tourniquet on, but a great team is going to have that tourniquet on in the first 5 minutes. The difference there. So that's part of the reasoning that we've broken that up. Our next thing here is about score criteria. People ask, well, what are we going to be scored on? And so first off, we start with the National Registry EMT skill sheets. Those skill sheets are the backbone of what we score on, but if we just did it on those, everyone would get 100%. Everyone could get 100%. Those are pretty simplistic. I mean, it's a formula, you just run through it. What we did is we looked at what does the book say would be the best care, and when we've looked at teams that are better than other teams, what did they do that made them better? Well, they talked to their patient and they continued to check in with their patient. That's in the book. You should be constantly monitoring their level of consciousness. When it says we should be checking doing a reassessment every 5 minutes for an unstable patient, the team that does that, they stood out to us, and that's not in our National Registry sheets. It's not spelled out in a way that's easily scoreable. So we've made our sheets to add in those type of criteria. If the book says that you should coach a patient to try to slow down their breathing, generally we don't see that in our sheets, but it is in the book. So Brady, whatever the current version is, Brady 13 is our Bible, is the thing we go by now, and if it's in there, then it's free game. And so we try to look into what's wrong with our patient. We look into the book. We find the items that we would foresee that teams would do, good teams would do and great teams would do. Sometimes we put in criteria in there thinking, hey, maybe they'll mess us up and they'll do this and this instead, and that wouldn't actually be good for our patient. So we try to foresee what teams might do that wouldn't be good. And hopefully teams don't do that. But it's a way that we could distinguish between good and better teams. The test is going to be based on Brady test banks. We just take the questions directly from those. Now, what we expect from our victims, judges, and responders is kind of what I'm going through next. So, our victims are warm bodies. They're there to do your assessment on and to do skills on. They don't act. We've had situations where we've had good actors that they wince when you touch something that's hurt, and that's given a huge advantage to the competitors that had that good actor. And we've had bad actors that they either ham it up and then people don't take it seriously, or they don't act at all, and that's been a detriment to responders. So we've just asked all the victims not to act at all. What you do is you do your assessment, and as you would find something, as you do the assessment correctly, the judge should step in and tell you what you're finding. So you can get all your clinical information from your judge. The victims are also identified really well with the specific shirt that says that they are a victim, so they stand out. There's a lot of people around. It's a little confusing, so we try to make sure that you know who your victims are. Now, judges, I have listed here professional as kind of the first expectation we have for them. We want to make sure that our challenge has integrity, and we don't want it to look like, from the outside observer, that people are chummy, or they're talking about the scenario or talking in a friendly way. So we actually tell our judges not to talk to the competitors, not be friendly with them. Just be matter of fact, that neutral, so that if you're going to talk to a competitor, you're probably going to talk to the competitors and it looks fishy. So it's not really been a problem, but we just want to make sure that we come across as being professional, and it's a professional thing. And sometimes we've had people mention that the judges seem a little cold, and that's just because we've told them to act that way. I mentioned painting the picture for the responder. We do expect the judge, if you are doing your assessment correctly and they are looking at something that is broken or something that is got a 4-inch laceration, they should tell you, you see a 4-inch laceration there. Often we have moulage on there, but sometimes that gets wiped away, sometimes it gets muddy. It should be very clear that the judge tells you. If you're asking questions of the patient, they should interject that the patient is not responding to you. The patient, you may not have checked level of consciousness yet, but they should point out to you that the patient's eyes are closed and he's not responding to you, or whatever. So they should help paint the picture of things that aren't real, that to make it real for you. Other thing that you should expect from your judge is when you are getting vitals or things like that, that they'll be ready with that information. The best way to do this is, if you grab a pulse, at a wrist, and you say, "Hey, Judge, I'm checking for a pulse," and then you wait 15 seconds and you look at your watch, and then you tell them after 15 seconds, "Judge, I got a pulse of 60." Now the judge will probably give you a number. They're probably going to say the pulse is 88. They'll probably also tell you, that it was thready, or that it was bounding, or irregular, or things like that. Giving them that heads up that you're going to be needing the pulse in about 15 seconds helps them find the information, but they should be ready with that information for you is kind of one of our expectations for judges. Telling them what you're doing also helps prepare them. I'm starting to get into responder expectations, which I'll get to here. We expect our responders to be professional also. So generally, dress and act like a team. Teamwork is something that we're looking for. Unless you are like a throwdown team and you just kind of selected a team the day of, which we've had sometimes. Generally, you should be in uniform or in a way that makes you look uniform to each other, so we can tell that group of 3 people are together. Maintain integrity. That comes about. We have some rules about not having your phones out during the competition, so that we don't have anyone, again, from the outside looking and thinking that they're texting their buddies and telling them what's coming up for them, or whatever information about the scenarios. We just ask all competitors to have their phones put away during the competition. All right, what can you do? Do what you can physically. What was I saying there? Do what you can, explain what you can't, is pretty much what I'm trying to say there. Anything that you can do and you can pull out of your bag, you should do. We've had some really good teams come in, and I say they're really good teams, really good providers. They come in and they say, okay, we should do this, we should do this, we should do this, and they don't do any of it, and they don't get any of the points, and they're frustrated. You need to do it. You need to actually get the thing out and set it up and put it on the person, and and do the skills. If you can't do it, we don't want you to actually put an OPA in someone, but you should get the OPA out, you should be measuring it, and you should be explaining how you would put it into the patient. Voice what you're suspecting or looking for. We had a gunshot wound, and so immediately this team, they rolled them, checked the back, and they didn't find an exit wound. But they didn't say they're looking for an exit wound. Now, if you do it immediately, the judge will probably pick up that you're looking for an exit wound. But we had another team that did it after a while. Like when they were ready to backboard them, they then said they're looking for an exit wound. Well, one, we'd want you to do it right away, and so that's kind of that immediate action thing. But they also didn't say that they were checking for an exit wound specifically, and they didn't find any wounds across the back, and they got the points for checking the upper and lower back, but they didn't get it for checking for an exit wound because they didn't say they were looking for it, and some time had passed from when they had discovered the entrance wound. And so if you can explain what you're doing to the judge, say what you're looking for, pertinent negatives and things like that, judges may pick up on it, but they might not. So try to explain to them what you're doing and what you're thinking. So that's pretty much the basics of our competition, just how it runs. So what we're planning to do next is to go through, have some more videos. And so in the next video, we're looking at going through the rules. Read through and explain the rules of the game. This seems like a boring thing, actually, but it's good to know what our thinking is and why something's in there. And as you're reading through the rules, you may question, hey, what's this about and what's that about? And we will probably, those are ones that often we get questions on, and so we'll probably have some examples and such to share during that. Next one that I've listed is the skill score sheet walkthrough. We're going to grab a scenario from a previous year, and we're going to go line by line and explain why some of those items are in there and what the team can do to get that point, if there needs to be explanation there. So we can explain how our score sheet works. We're hoping to then do one that has a video of competition. So I've done this before, and usually the sound is really bad. It's hard to pick out the judges and the competitors and such. We should get lapel mics on everyone and get it so we can get a better video. But it sounds like we have some people that may have some better video for us. So we're looking at putting together a video that shows competition happening, and we can explain what's happening, explain what's good about what we're seeing, or what things they could have done better, so that you can understand what this competition looks like and how to do your best in it. And then lastly, we were looking at putting in a frequently asked questions video that just, as questions have come in, what types of things do people ask us, and we can reiterate. And it might be some things from rules, it might be some things from the score sheet, from all these different areas. So we might be highlighting some of the same things, but it's things that people heard or they knew, but they didn't quite understand. So we'll have further explanation. Thank you very much for coming and watching this video, and hope to give you more information in future videos.